we're creating this art and sharing it as a group of people. No one is going to experience our record, Eric and I's record, without seeing David Behringer's images.
It's interesting how through art you can sort of just slip between dimensions a little bit. And, you know, we speak of life that is short for sure, but there's life within life. And art is a window into not just your soul, but a place in which time may not even exist.
It's April 2025, and this is the Music is Art podcast, episode number 5. It's the official podcast of the Spotted Peccary music label. I'm your host, Daniel Pipitone, and I'm not in Tucson anymore. I'm back in southwestern Pennsylvania, and it's dark and stormy, but I am being joined by 3 wonderful people. So I have with me tonight music artists on the label, musical collaborators, David Helpling from California, Eric the Tailor from Rochester, New York, and all the way from Tokyo, Japan, David Behringer, who was one of the key elements in David and Eric's latest collaboration. So we're going to talk all about that this afternoon, this evening, this morning. So good to be with you all. So I'll start just by setting it up a little bit selfishly, because this is the Music is Art podcast. Us as a label, Spotted Peccary tries very hard to bring, something very specific to the table with every single project. And that's like working with the artist to talk about, at the very beginning, before anything really happens, what's the concept, what's the goal of the musical project, and then work through that process with the artist so that in the end, we sort of combine and blend their vision for the project and making sure that we treat both the musical piece with the utmost importance, but we like to also join that up with the visual component so that it's truly and literally an extension of the musical project. So the two things get sort of equal weight, at least from my perspective, because I'm not the audio guy and I'm not the artist, but I'm the person who's responsible for the visual side. But I place so much importance and emphasis on understanding what the sonically and musically what the goal is, so that I can bring my perspective to it to make sure that visually I extend the vision on behalf of the artist, so that visually I extend that idea. So it's almost like a continued conversation from the audio, over to the visual side of things. And we try to do that with every project. And I just wanted to set that up because the purpose of this conversation, I think, is that it was like, to me, working with David Behringer, who supplied all these wonderful visuals that we use for this project. It was like the most luxurious process for me, because every single image was perfect. It's one of those things where I see every single image and it's perfect for every single scenario, right? And it did the absolute most perfect job of communicating this music. And you may all have lots to say about that, but I can only say that from my perspective, when the idea was posed to me to use Dave's photography, I was instantly, in heaven, because it was just this perfect blending of everything that I was hearing in the music. And I guess that's the point. So I would open that up to you both, to all 3 of you, David and Eric, from the musical aspect of the project and what your vision for it was. And tell me a little bit about what the visuals for the project meant to you, and maybe even before that, like what the vision for the project was in general from a conceptual standpoint that helped us get to the point where we are now, which is a perfect blending of the music with the visuals.
Well, things happen sometimes the way that they happen, and they always happen not the way that you thought they were going to happen or the way that you had intentionally planned it. I had the title The Precious Dark before Eric and I started working on the music, but I knew, and we can get to that story later, but before I started working on Eric's ideas, because Eric started this whole album, and then I put in my part, and then we worked together. But I had The Precious Dark. I knew it was going to be called that. I had no idea what the cover was going to be. I did come up with some ideas like landscapes and stuff, but this was, I don't know how many years ago. 3 years ago, Eric?
3+.
Yeah. So it was a while before we started working on the music, but the title was there, and I kind of had a concept of what that title meant. And I think to anyone that listens to music in this genre, when they hear something like The Precious Dark, they may already gather what that means. It doesn't mean we want to be in complete darkness and the darkness is awesome. It means that the darkness is precious, because when something does shine, it means so much more when it's not taken out of balance, when it's that one thing that's the most beautiful thing in the room. And visually, I never connected that to album art, because, Eric and I were fiercely cranking on the music once we started doing it. And then, and quickly as a side note, I was already a fan of David Behringer's art. Like when I was finishing my last album, which is in 2021. How long, David, have we been talking?
It's been over 3 years, actually.
Okay. Yeah.
That's when we started talking, and we started talking about employing the photographs in some album art, possibly purchasing one or two photos. And I think two releases passed. I think it was Rune and then In, of course.
Yep.
And I'm a grown up. I understand things happen, move in different directions. No problem, but you and I share the same, like we're kindred spirits, I believe, because my my photos match your music so well in my mind.
Yeah.
And so when that didn't materialize, I'm like, that's no problem. And just, but we've been talking for, just over 3 years.
So I'm a fan. I believe I was scrolling on Instagram and I saw one of your images. I believe that's how I found you. And it stopped me in my tracks because it didn't look like AI, or it didn't look like some digital thing. It wasn't a landscape. It was something that I didn't know what it was, but it had an emotional impact on me. So I was like, I'm going to message this guy. What am I looking at? And I think once we started talking, I was already a super fan. And I still have a folder of all my favorite ones of yours, because at one point you sent me a bunch. And things happened and albums happened. But now it's come full circle. And it turns out that your very unique style of, if I can call it, macro photography.
That's one.
Fits the exact concept of the album perfectly. Like, it describes your art, and your art describes our record. So
Absolutely.
now the art is right, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe we can just pause here for a second and just talk about. So Dave Behringer is an American living in Tokyo, right? And you're not
actually in Nagoya, Japan.
Nagoya. Oh, okay. So
that's fine.
So you don't just do this macro photography. You do other styles of photography, other subjects, right? You have an approach that isn't always macro. So can you talk for a second about your focus on the macro photography, and maybe a little bit about how you approach that, like how you actually do that?
Yeah, I love to travel, and I think my love for travel is like the main reason why I'm over here in Japan. Of course, I make a living over here, but in the summers and in the winters, I have a lot of time. I have 6 weeks in the summer and 3 weeks in the winter, usually to travel around. And so every year, I would go to 2 or 3 countries, and just backpacking. And for the longest time, I would just take the snaps and with my camera and not really put any artistic effort into it, and then post them on Facebook primarily, and some on Instagram. And then friends and family began saying, you know what, you've got an eye for this, you've got a knack for this, you really ought to take it more seriously. So then at that point is when I started exploring different genres of photography. Primarily landscape and travel photography is what it started off as. And then as I developed a much deeper love for the art, I made the foray into macro photography, as well as doing some portrait photography, as well as street photography. Street photography, so many great opportunities here in Japan. The wet streets and the vibe, the atmosphere here in Japan. It's a completely different world over here. A lot of times, the scenes that you come across as you're walking along the streets. So, but anyway, it was one evening. I came home from work. It had rained, and the lights. I live on a street where on either side there are these antique light fixtures, and they just completely. It's almost like at the airport a runway, if you will, and you have these da 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 da, da, and they reflected in the puddles on the ground that had formed from the rain and all, and I was just like, oh yeah, this is amazing. So I took a couple of shots with my smartphone, and then I got home and was flipping through them, and I was like, you know what? I wonder what these would look like at a macro level. And it was at that point that the idea of this was birthed, and it didn't immediately materialize. The images that are on Instagram are certainly not what first came into my camera. It took time, and it still takes time. Sometimes I'll sit down and I'll look for a composition, and it'll take me a solid 30 minutes before I find something that I'm happy with. Let me kind of throw in an explanation of what it is that people are looking at when they look at my photography. Um, I don't just wait for every time that it rains. I take a water bottle around, literally. I take a water bottle, and if it hasn't rained, I will make my own puddles. Okay, and the the most important thing, I think, is the light source. I need a strong light source. So here in Japan, lots of neon, and I use that. What I do is I just pour water on the surface of the street or wherever, and the light source yields its light onto the surface of the water, and the surface upon which the water is poured will affect the surface of the water. It's kind of tricky to explain. And what that does is it in turn bends the light that's resting on the surface of the water, and at a macro level provides these otherworldly quantum realm like shapes and patterns. And basically, to what David was saying earlier, is it highlights, it shows light,
Yeah.
in a way that I've never seen it shown in photography before, giving light shapes and edges, like visible edges. And still, I'm fascinated by it. Even now, after 6, 7 years of taking these photos, it just blows my mind that light will exhibit these kind of shapes and patterns and edges.
And it's interesting too to hear you talk about what happens to the light as it's reflecting, and then the resulting, imagery that you get. I don't know, with Eric and David, how you feel about how it connects to the music, but to me, when I saw the photography, it immediately struck me the same way the music does. And so much of the music that David and Eric are producing, and lots of the really great music in this genre in general, is that so much of it is about not just the notes, but what's between the notes. In a lot of cases, not about the tones and the sounds that you hear, but what happens and why it matters, like between in those empty spaces, in those areas between sounds, and what's happening to, as you're listening to it. It's a deep listening experience. And much like when I look at your images, Dave, that they become like a deep viewing experience. And I feel like when I saw the photography, it was an immediate match. I thought, how perfect are these images, that they give me the same experience on a visual level as the music does, and an auditory level. Like I get the same experience. So to blend those two things together was just perfection to me. So I don't know if David and Eric, you want to say anything about what that was like for you to see those images, knowing what you know and the way you think about the music.
Eric, what do you think?
There's a really wonderful backstory to this with David. And, the music initially came out of that period that was also the Dark Sky Alliance record recording. David Helpling must be 8, 9, 10 records deep now with Spotted Peccary music. So he came to have a very clear and concise vision as to how he wanted the music represented visually, as he does for all of his recordings. Very important that artistically the visual aspects are as strong and harmonized and are one with the music that it holds and represents. So, David Helpling has worked with many photographers, many friends that are photographers of David Helpling's. And so he, in the beginning, had explained to me, I'm working with this one photographer. I'd like you to have a look at this work. And I'm working with this other photographer. I want you to have a look at this work. And when he brought David Behringer's work in front of me, I was like, there's something so interesting, whereas it's the macro photography is speaking to me internally, but representing this explosive and expansive music that David Helpling had produced. And so we kept coming back to David Behringer and some of the other photographers that David Helpling had worked with in the past and so forth. Some of the communications that we were having with them kind of felt like business deals. Whereas when we worked with David Behringer always and forever put his art first and foremost. And that really helped that meld that you speak of, Daniel. That's why there's such a strong bond between the visual aspect of this release and the music itself, because Behringer's doing it for the right reasons. It's for the art.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Yeah.
I mean,
well put, Eric.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I will echo that, or just take that one step further and say, we talked about I think someone mentioned briefly the AI idea. And I will say that early on in talking to David Helpling about what this was going to be, before we even had a visual direction yet, we knew we were going to use David Behringer's imagery, but something that became sort of the core tenet that we align this whole thing with is that we want this to be fully produced by humans, right? And so that idea became like, to start with, he mentioned it, and I think we both laughed, like, yeah, of course, right? Of course. Why wouldn't it be made by humans? Of course it is. But it really, truly is, from start to finish. In keeping that idea at the core of this whole thing was really important to me. And to the point where, like, I could use these new modern tools. Like, I can be in Photoshop and I need to scale this image and it doesn't match the aspect ratio, and I could really use a couple extra inches on both sides. I can get AI to do that for me now. It's like a blink of an eye and it's done, but I refused. Like I couldn't even bring myself to do that because I felt if I did, it would pull that project away from that core idea. And I did not want to do that because I wanted to honor the music, which you all, you put your hands on the instruments to make. And then David like put his hands on his camera, didn't do any other special effects, right? He used the available light, and he's a human with his camera, and you guys are humans with your instruments. And I just could not bring myself to introduce any sort of weird outside, alien forces. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. And I feel like that idea has been really important to me through the whole thing, to the point where it became a tagline on the packaging. It became a message in the videos. That, it's just at the core of this thing. I don't know if David and Eric, as the people whose musical output we're talking about, you can maybe say something about what that idea meant to you.
I think for me, the produced by humans was really important for me. I'm not afraid of AI. AI isn't bad, but in the last year and a half, we've seen a bazillion Mid-Journey AI album covers, and there's a look to them that doesn't sit with me right. And as soon as I'm thinking about this music that Eric and I did, Eric is using these awesome vintage analog synthesizers and tweaking knobs in real time and recording all this stuff that's real. And I'm in here banging on guitars, an actual piano with strings on it through pedals and synthesizers, and everything is, we're not like going in the computer, which there's a lot of stuff in the computer these days that makes sounds. And I'm still and even more so going backwards to synthesizers, cables, analog mixer, really good mixing techniques, making music. And so I really wanted, I wanted this album to be proud that it is made by all of us together. In fact, all four of us here on this call is who made it, So it made so much sense for Dave's artwork to just be a part of that, because it's not that he just stumbles upon it and takes a picture. He goes there, he finds the angle, he pours the water. He'll probably look at a place for an hour until the light is refracting through the lens just right. Like, you have to create these images. You create them. You don't just walk by and snap it and it's done. And just like you said, you're painstakingly working hard to find this image that you find exciting. And that love that you put into your art is what we see. And that's why Eric gets affected emotionally while I get affected emotionally. And Daniel is super into it. So all of this just makes perfect sense for us to work together to make a record with our hands and try to make something beautiful to share with the world,
There's some photographer friends that I know that have started just kind of playing around with AI, just experimenting, and that's how they justify it as such. Is I'm not giving up photography. I just want to see what Midjourney can do. But once you go down that path, AI and photography or AI and music, there's such a disconnect when it comes to it's great. AI can produce some amazing things and all, but when it comes to made by humans, there's a disconnect there. So just like what you're talking about with Eric with his analog, you with your hands on the guitar, me with my hands on the camera, it's humans creating art, just like what you said.
It is. It's a treat for us to get to work with you and for you to be so kind. And when we all had this idea, mostly Daniel had the idea for the booklet, for us to have each of the 7 chapters, each of the 7 songs be represented by a different image of yours that looks and feels like the music sounds. And for you to come in and collaborate with Daniel and produce that is a total gift. And we're super stoked. I am. Erica is. It's just, it is the face of the music. And like Eric said, I've done 8 or 9 albums, and usually the album art is something that just looks cool, that kind of is to be the face of the music, and it's a square, and that's what you're doing. But in this case, it actually feels like maybe the music made your art come alive, and your art made the music. It feels like they make each other make sense. And I've never had that experience as a recording artist ever. So it's really cool, for sure.
Thank you.
We did have a listening party. I think we agreed we were going to maybe refresh our memories on that. It was amazing. I think we had 60 or so people together listening awesome. To that, like from start to finish. So for anyone who missed it, you missed out. It was it's great.
I was asleep. Sorry.
That's okay. You're in a slightly different time zone than when we had it scheduled. But
you're on the other side of the world, Dave. So it's okay.
You are.
But the listening party is I don't know if it is, but it feels like the listening party idea is something fairly unique to Spotted Peccary music. I don't know of other albums in our genre or related genres outside our cloud of ambient electronic or whatever it is to have like listening parties. And even though it's online, if you imagine myself and Eric Taylor and Daniel and like 60 people in a room hanging out with each other, listening to 63 minutes of music from beginning to end and being immersed in it and kind of quietly talking about it while it's playing. That's what it was. And I was like, yeah, this is pretty cool. And there was a lot of listeners that showed up from a lot of countries praising it, you know, and we talked about you, of course, because you're integral. So all good things, of course.
Yeah. Yeah,
I'm sorry. I was in spirit, in dream. I was there. Yeah.
No, that's right. That's right.
All right. Yeah. So it's like 60 people sitting on one big long couch, right? And so it was
great. So exciting. It was so exciting that I didn't know whether or not I should get off and leave because people were still chiming in after the music. Sure. It was really fun. One of the last gentlemen to join and to say hello was coming in from the Baltic Sea.
Wow.
Which I thought was just amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing.
Of, listeners from Germany and Italy, but that was the first time I had seen somebody from the Baltic Sea. And I thought, wow, Spotted Peccary is really reaching, you know, the far corners of the earth. And it was a beautiful party. Like it had a vibe, and it felt like those 60 people, like for that 63 minutes, we had our own very safe world that was just fun to play in.
Mm.
And the music was a wonderful soundtrack to that.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. There was actual love in the listening party. I could feel it. It was cool. Yeah. And it was the first time I had listened to the music from a third party, because I'm listening to it knowing that there's all these people listening to it and possibly judging it. And that's what the self-critical artist does. But I got to hear it more as it might wash over other people. So the listening party let me kind of have a couch experience instead of a producer intense experience. I got to just let it go and go, okay, so this is how it feels to go from track 1 to track 2. And this is what it happens when track 3 happens. And because we did release 2 singles, the first single was track 2 and the second single was track 1. When we got to track 3 in the listening party, it was technically like a world premiere of that piece of music.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh, we're playing it for the first time. And Eric and I have been working on this thing for like a year and a half or whatever. So it was a cool moment for us to just like, okay, finally we're setting it free. Finally, it's going to go find all those hungry ears, which is the reason we create music in the first place, is to share it with people and to let people have their experiences, hopefully beautiful ones, you know?
Absolutely.
Actors do that a lot. You know, they'll step inside a cinema and just watch people watching the movie to see their reaction.
Yeah.
So in a sense, you guys, that was an opportunity to have that experience.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was awesome.
Very good experience. A lot of fun.
Was it your first time to be involved in a listening party like something like this?
Well, Eric, we were both in the Dark Sky Alliance one, weren't we?
Yeah, yep. Which was another. Actually, that was good. That was cool too.
Yeah. So
I was
Eric,
asleep. I was asleep then as well.
once again,
people, it's just because of the time zones. It's not that I don't want to participate.
he doesn't sleep all the time. Yeah. But to say just real quick, we're talking about Dark Sky Alliance. For those that are watching, Eric and I are officially one half of the group Dark Sky Alliance. And so we were both present at the listening party for that record. When was that, Daniel? How long ago was that? My world is spinning, so I don't know what year we're in or anything.
Well, it was middle of last year, right? Yeah, it's been a while.
I guess.
Yeah, middle of last year.
So, that's Jerry Murata, amazing drummer, Rupert Greenall, keyboardist from The Fix, and Eric, the Taylor, and I put that record together. And here we are with our first collaborative release. It's so cool. Eric's just becoming the center of things. I don't know if he planned that on purpose or what. But that's what's happening.
I'm off center.
No,
I can touch it, but I can't hold on.
We're all orbiting around you. We're orbiting around
it's
you.
It's true.
Eric.
Fun fact about this record, please, is that much like the AI was not to be present on this release, we tried to incorporate the human spirit as much as we could. And instead of just passing tracks back and forth between David Helpling and myself, I did travel to San Diego and spent time in his studio in Deep Exile, right with him side by side, which was a treat.
We had a blast. Really
amazing stuff out of those sessions. Incredible.
Yeah. Eric would have like two hands on a synthesizer, like he's playing stuff and tweaking knobs, and I'm reaching over him, turning the mixer and going over here, and we're recording our real-time performance and the stuff we're doing, and we just had a blast for several days, just stumbling over each other, having fun. And it was the first time for Eric to come into my studio and experience where I had taken his original starter concepts. So the first couple hours were just me presenting the music to Eric and him getting to experience in my room what I had done with it. And then we just went crazy and kept working on the music.
It was a stream of consciousness that lasted for days, in which David Helpling captured beautifully, which became some of the latter recordings of this release. And electrifying performances. Again, being in the room with a composer like David Helpling, working side by side to create something is, for me, a lasting memory, which I'll take to the grave and beyond. It was a true privilege for me. And I say that with the highest respect for David Helpling as a composer. I see David as an important modern composer for our time. Often David Helpling and I will musically disagree, which I must tell you is why we work so well together. Because if we were to come from the same schools, there would be no point in us working together. It would just be like looking yourself dead in the mirror, trying to see a different face.
Sure.
So, David's idea of what ambient music is not what I believe ambient music to be. And so we meld these musical worlds and come to create an album such as this and, previous with Dark Sky Alliance. And I think that's very important, that we don't really musically are on the same idea of what music can and cannot be or should not be. We musically can argue with that and come up with something very unique between the two of us, which is what this album is.
Yeah, I mean, we don't clash, but Eric and I are two different planets and two different sets of desires. And Eric is so avant-garde and so bold and courageous and reckless. It's inspiring. He has changed the way I work on my music now. He has inspired me through this process to be more reckless, record everything, record while you're turning knobs. Don't manicure everything. Let it be raw. I mean, make it sound awesome. But it's not that we disagree. It's that he has this approach that I like to make songs. I like to make melodies that people can hum or whistle after the song. I want things to be memorable and get stuck in their heart, you know. But sometimes Eric goes deep with some avant like sound world stuff, and all of it you can hear that it's been captured in real time from his synthesizers, and none of it was planned. I have a feeling he presses record and then just starts doing stuff, and then magic happens. But maybe that's incorrect. Eric, why don't you tell us the secret?
It's dead on. But yeah, exactly. We don't clash. I certainly don't want you to get that idea, Daniel. But we definitely bring so much unique musicality between the two of us that, The Precious Dark is an excellent example of what we're capable of doing musically. And I think there's more to come.
There is more to come officially, but we don't know when.
Well, that's what I was going to say when you talked about how you can disagree musically. I would go so far as to say that might be the case, but you don't hear dissonance. I don't hear disconnect. I don't hear disparity. I hear maybe two different perspectives that blend together perfectly well to tell this other story, right? It's Eric bringing a little bit of his perspective and David bringing a little bit of his perspective. And in the end, they're telling this combined story. And it's a beautiful combination. And isn't that, and then David, you said it, like, isn't that why we're all here in the first place, to come out of the other end of a project like this, all having learned a little bit of something from each other, right? Like, I think I will probably approach projects from a visual standpoint, having taken a little piece of what I learned from what I've picked up from David Behringer's photography. And that's precisely the point. Like, we're all here to learn from one another. We're all in the same big collective room together. And that's precisely the point, in my opinion.
When David Helpling was explaining that, I was an influence on his approach, I would like for you to know, David, that you are the same for me. The recording, the space in which you allow music to live, all that is very important to me, very attractive to me as a musician, and why I originally reached out to you those years back was because of your compositions and where you were placing them within my cranium. Very unique approach to space, which just became so important to me that I had to work with you. I had to.
Yeah, if we can just do a short, quick thing about Eric and I and our history. It started out, I don't know when, I don't know how many years now, but you reached out to me on Facebook or something out of the blue. I had no idea who you were. And you said, I think you came right out and said, I like your music. I want to work with you. There was no small talk,
Sounds very direct.
Sounds right.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, man, nice to meet you. Cool. Maybe I should listen to your music or whatever. And we talked for quite a bit. And then he'd start calling me and we had phone conversations. And I instantly fell in love with the guy. You can hear him now. He's so passionate about music. He's so kind. And he's an artist. Like, he is like a full-on artist, not a musician. He's an artist. He wants to create something unique that has a palpable feeling. So I was like, okay, we're going to make a record. I just have to finish In, which took me way too long. As soon as In was finished, and this was 2022, right? In was finished, but it was still going to be months before it was out. I called you and I said, okay, I am now starting on our album right now because In is finished. And because In was such a big, complex, shimmering pop kind of ambient record, I was super, super ready for something really minimal, something very open, something very dark, something very calm. And, In was a very difficult album for me to produce. I'm very proud of it. I love it, but it took a lot out of me. And when I came out the other side, what I needed was the soothingness of working with you on The Precious Start. And just like Dave Behringer's Images, I wanted the music where you could listen to it and you're really hearing like one thing. Yes, there might be some beautiful stuff in the background that's blurred out, but there's this thing that you can hear, and you can hear the space around the thing. It's not the 20 layers of stuff that we had in with these very produced musical tracks. And that's why there's almost no drums on this album. And a lot of the music you could play on a piano, some of it. So it's another reason that Dave's art made so much sense. When we came to it, it was like, wait a second, his art is the concept of the album, and it was where I wanted to go. It's where we ended up going. And we have 7 10-minute tracks. I don't know whose idea that was. I think it just happened. But I think being okay sitting in a space and being okay loving this pure, simple, beautiful thing, not having to be wowed or blown away or entertained, became the pull for all of us, I think.
I love hearing how both of you worked together and you complemented each other, and you actually pushed each other outside of your own comfortable boundaries. And so just what you were saying, you never would have thought to go this direction, but Eric provided the inspiration to push you in that direction, and together y'all explored something that you never would have even considered exploring. You made a comment, actually it's several months back. Your images look like my music. I so appreciate that compliment. My mind was blown. I called my mother and I shared that. I'm serious, because there honestly, in my mind, there was not anything better that you could say. It was direct, to the point, and the best compliment that you could have paid me. Yeah. So
it's the first time I've said that to anyone, and the first time I've even had an instinct to say, that's what my music sounds like. That is it. So yeah, that's why I said that. And I believe it. And everyone can see it and feel it with this album, listening to the music and looking at your images. I'm there. Speaking of which, the first single, which is the title track, as it turns out, The Precious Dark, Daniel made a music video for it. And you are the star of the music video. Why don't you guys tell, how did that happen? Because I wasn't involved in that. It just happened between Daniel and Dave. So
right.
How was that?
And so, first of all, I couldn't agree more that Dave's photography looks like the music. I mean, it is the visual representation, the absolute perfect visual representation of the music that I hear. So, okay, so my task is to create the video to go along with this track. I could not think of anything better to do than to, go ahead and ask Dave, like, hey, I know we're dealing with all of your still photography, but what are the chances that you've got some moving images that tell the same story, or tell a story in the same way, that have the same character, the same feel, the same approach to capturing those visuals as the stills did? And so sure enough, he did. And I think he was gracious to collect up what he had on his cutting room floor and graciously, supply that as source material, which, then I built around it a little bit to complete a story.
Which you did fantastically. Yeah.
So and I will go so far as to say it only made sense for me to tell a story as if I'm putting myself in David Behringer's shoes, right? So in other words, the video is literally about The Precious Dark, but it is also literally about what would it be like for David Behringer to discover this refracting light in a puddle on the street and immediately be drawn to the idea of needing to capture it? Like there's nothing else. That's his sole purpose when he sees it, is I have to capture it, right? So what would that be like, and how do you tell that story? And that I literally told David Behringer's story, or I tried to, in that video, because it is the perfect representation of the story of that track. So yeah, I think, to me, I could not have created a video to tell that story any other way than to say, please share with me anything that you have, because that's the core of it,
And it's funny, as a photographer, nowadays the digital camera allows you to take video clips as well. And at the time, 5-6 years ago, when I was discovering these interesting landscapes of light, I thought, I'll just take a video clip and primarily to show my mom, and honestly, because the images are one thing, but to kind of to take a video that where the light is moving, it gives a little bit more depth and possibly even a bit of an explanation as far as how the still image, where it came from, essentially.
Sure.
And here in Japan, there's a variety of different kind of neon lights and things. So it was just I was just very fortunate that I happened to have, back years ago, taken some videos and that I had those on my computer actually on a hard drive. So when you said, Daniel, do you happen to have anything? I'm like, well, actually, but I wasn't sure if it was what you wanted. But yeah, the video looks fabulous. You did such a great job putting it together. You really did. Kudos to you for doing my for taking the scraps of video clips and making it into a story.
Well, thanks for saying that. But as I always tell people that I'm working with, here at the label, it's like every time we work on something together, every time I work with David, he's always gracious to say thank you. And I say, well, it's so easy when the source material is that inspiring, and when the music tells the story. And in this case, it's the music and the visuals became like this unbelievable combination that was so easy. I just needed to get out of the way, and it was quite simple, to be honest. But
the music video is so beautiful, and there's a moment in the video where it goes to Dave Behringer's visuals, and it happens with the music, and it is explosive. It's explosive. It's the I feel the earth moving.
It is.
Yeah,
that was the point. So and leading into that sort of the drop, right, is the lens of a camera, and it was like that was a happy accident. I found that little piece of footage and thought that sets it up, because then it becomes, all of a sudden, boom! All of a sudden, we're seeing the world through Dave's lens, and
such a cool transition.
It just happened.
Video that, and you guys made it together, and I didn't see it until it was done, and I was like, amazing. How cool is it that this is the way people are going to experience the first single, is with Behringer's art and Daniel coming together and our music. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. I'm so thankful to all three of you for choosing to utilize my photography, and it has given and will give my photography an audience that I never dreamed possible. And of course, that's made by the streaming platforms. That's made possible by Bandcamp and by Spotify and the other Pandora, the other excuse me, pardon me, by the other streaming platforms, that wherever the music is present, so are the images. They're tied. They're married together from now into eternity. And it's kind of, you've kind of given my art a legacy. Well, no, not kind of. You have. You've given my art a legacy to where long after I pass away, our art will still be out there and available for people all around the world to enjoy. And it just, it's mind blowing, and it's so incredibly humbling to me, because this all originated from a happy accident.
Mm-hmm.
It's true.
You know.
Well, David, this is a wonderful way for us all to live forever. If I could quickly, Behringer, I'm experiencing the same thing in the sense where your photography has been the doorway to Japan. I have never made so many friends on Facebook and Instagram with Japanese photographers who you are really in touch with. Like your work, it's fun to watch just how well it blows up on Instagram. You know, you've got a hell of a following for your work. And so this is very much so, you know, a relationship that it feels like we are also growing musically through the introduction that you are making to Japan for us. And we are equally as grateful. David Helpling and I are, we're a lot like you, Behringer, you know, humbled at our craft. And as it all takes us forward and as we all grow artistically, it is a beautifully humbling experience. Mm-hmm. So we're equally as, and David Helpling and I have had this conversation in regards to you and your work. This is been a wonderful experience and humbling for us as well. Please understand that.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah, you're the rock star, actually.
You're the rock star.
No, you are. You are.
Oh, you got this one, man.
No, your images and your following and all these really high-end photographers are tripping out on your work. And like Eric said, you are blowing up. Everyone loves your stuff. And we just made some music and you let us use some of your images. So that's how I feel about it.
I have literally had my phone sitting like on the coffee table, like watching a show with my wife, and she's like, "What is going on with your phone?" Like bang, bang, bang. It's just blowing up. And every single one of the notifications, I could scroll through them and like, oh, it's someone commenting on a post I'm tagged in. And it's all David Behringer's posts that are using the music from from the release. And it's like, it's reaction after reaction. So it's just unreal.
Yeah, it's a ton of fun.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. It's like a world is open up.
Just a caveat: if you guys ever get tired of me tagging you on the photos, then absolutely just say the word.
That will never ever happen.
Never happen.
Never. Nope.
You're too kind.
We need to make more music so you have more options.
Yeah.
We're creating this art and sharing it as a group of people. Mm-hmm. No one is going to experience our record, Eric and I's record, without seeing David Behringer's images. No way.
That blows me away.
Every streaming platform is the cover, and all of Instagram is connecting us, thanks to you, Dave. And we are creating this art because we are compelled to. My goal with music is always to infuse the music with actual love. It's like in the frequencies of the music, and it's encoded in there in this very high resolution digital format that is capable of capturing a bazillion frequencies in a stereo image. And that's what I do because I want to share that feeling and that vibe with people. So it's really important. You are doing the exact same thing, except instead of frequencies and a digital audio recording, you are a world of color in these images. And that is how you are putting your love or your love for your craft or your love for where you were at the time or whatever. It gets infused in the images to a certain degree, I think. Yeah. And I think truly. I think we're all doing the same thing, and it's awesome to be working with a visual artist that is on our level of expression and desire to share.
Yeah. And also follows this. I don't know if I like the word ambient so much, but non-traditional, unorthodox is a word that's a lot of times been used for my photography, and I would apply it to the two of your compositions as well, in the sense that it doesn't follow the same traditional chorus, bridge, verse, sorry, verse, bridge, chorus. Yeah. That's why I'm not a musician. But and it breaks those boundaries to where the palette of music you guys just totally explore. And that's kind of just what you're saying. That's kind of what I do with my camera is I don't limit myself to the traditional rules of photography. I'm not I don't have any formal training as a photographer. For better or for worse, when I was in college, I majored in business and I got my MBA, and I didn't have any time for photography classes. That wasn't an interest of mine at the time. Isn't life interesting sometimes? But
Yeah.
so I think as I listen to the two of your creations, it infuses just what you were saying. It infuses in my mind as far as like what I'm looking for in compositions, and removes boundaries, removes rules, traditional rules that professional photographers would traditionally follow. So it's a perfect marriage of creativity, I think.
That brings up an interesting point too. Maybe we can just spend a minute or two on this, but this idea, and whenever I have talked to others about like the process that I go through on a particular project and what we go through the process of creating a release as a label, I myself, when I insert myself into the process, I really only have one hard and fast rule, and that's that when I'm working on that release, I make sure that I'm listening to the music, and I sort of immerse myself in it, and that's the only thing I'll listen to while I'm working on it. In other words, like in the course of my day, if I'm doing regular work, and then in the evenings I might work on the artwork, I'll stop everything and I'll make sure that music is playing while I'm working, because I really feel strongly that it does color my mindset so that I become immersed in it, and then I have no choice but to react. When we first talked, you mentioned that, when you go out and you do this photography, you are listening to music. It isn't always the music for the imagery that ends up ultimately being part of something, but you're always listening to music when you're out doing that. And I think that probably matters, right?
Absolutely. It's tied. It's firmly tied to each other. I'm not all the time, but sometimes I listen to synthwave music. I like artists like The Midnight and Kalex and Time Cop 1980, I think, or some.
Yeah.
But it's great music to listen to as you're walking down wet streets with reflections of neon from the Japanese signs, and you have the Japanese kanji all over the place.
I can feel
it's
it.
really cool. Very Blade Runner.
Yeah, I was going to say I can feel like I'm in the set of Blade Runner just thinking about it.
Yeah.
What a great soundtrack to your art creation experience is to be walking down the streets of Japan with all these neon lights, listening to synthwave music, which is like the sound of neon lights. Like I see aqua and fuchsia lights, going, and some of those are in your images. That's so cool. It totally fits. It's cool.
When I sit down on the sidewalk or find a spot where there's a strong light source, it's at that moment that I switch off the synthwave and put on the likes of the two of yours music. And that it helps me. It helps me look at these images. These aren't like traditional images of landscapes. They're very much abstract, free flowing thought-provoking. What do you call the Rochester? No, what the ink blots?
Rorschach.
What help me out here? What's it?
Rorschach. Yeah.
Rorschach.
Yeah,
Rorschach. Yeah. Rochester is a city in
that's
in the
where
States.
Eric is. That's where he lives.
Rochester, New York.
Yeah, there you
Represent.
go. I knew it came from somewhere up here, you know. Your music truly opens up my creative dam or creative juices, and just removes all boundaries and lets my eyes. It helps me create. That's the best thing I can say about it. It truly helps me create, and it helps me see the artistic view in this muddle of color.
A good descriptor that I use when people ask, well, what kind of music is the label associated with? Because it's really hard to define in a lot of ways. Yeah. It's really atmospheric, right? That's the descriptor that I like to use. It's atmospheric. And I think that kind of music, that kind of approach to music and to visual art as well, it helps it colors your mindset. It colors the space that you're in. So when you're sort of allowing atmospheric music to wash over you, it's almost like you can't help but be transported by the music. And that's often the way I describe the music that the label publishes. It's meant for deep listening in many cases, not every case, but in most of the releases, you could argue are meant for careful, deep listening that you get rewarded from listening to. And oftentimes that reward is that you're sort of, you're transported to some other place. And I think that's part of the purpose, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Totally. The headphone journeys, every time that I'm producing the music in here, I'm making the music for me. I'm making it sound like how I want it to sound. Sure. And I, as much as everyone else in the world, I am constantly looking for an escape from reality.
Kindred spirits right here.
Yeah, I'm always looking for an escape. Yeah, so when I'm making the music, I want to create something that I can get lost in myself, that is the stuff of my own dreams. And I'm constantly trying to create the sounds that I'm always reaching higher. I'm trying to make something more modulated, more beautiful, whether it's with guitar or pianos or synthesizers or whatever. I'm always trying to go beyond to the next thing. And I don't know, I'm just really driven to create this experience for me, knowing that subconsciously it's going to be an experience, a headphone journey for the listener eventually. And I'm hoping that those listeners that like this music like the place I wanted to go, because I'm providing them a place to go, but it's exactly where I wanted to go. So it's really cool when it lines up like that. It's an experience. And you are using music to get lost in the images you create in real time, and to find that exact angle and that exact blur versus sharpness versus light versus color to get that thing that is juicing you up, and then you snap it. And that's a moment frozen in time. Yeah. Whereas with Eric and I, every riff we played when it was recording, that thing is now frozen in time, and it's part of a linear piece of art, So I think the parallels are very close.
Mm-hmm. You guys should do a BTS behind the scenes, like when you're creating. I can imagine that, as Eric is playing, you're reaching over and all. That would be
true.
Fans would love that behind the scenes insights.
If they only knew the truth and how much we were laughing and cussing at each other and going, oh wait, that was so awesome. Play that again. And I go, which part was awesome? This part? No, that's horrible. That other thing. Play that quick. Go do it. It can be chaotic, but we're chasing down the truth. And we're yelling at each other, and Eric will do something. He and this was one of the big lessons we talked about earlier. When Eric came to San Diego and we were finishing the album together, he came and sat where my keyboard is right here,
Oh.
and I backed up and he was in my spot, and he immediately did things on the synthesizer that I never do. He started bending notes up and down out of the key, and it was the most beautiful stuff I had ever heard, and I've been making music for 30 years. Eric comes over here and in 1 second totally blows my mind because his approach is so avant, but at the same time so haunting, so when we're together, there's a lot of discovery, whether we voice it or not. Yeah.
It's a good thing that you didn't come up behind him and tap him on the shoulder and go, "You're sitting in my spot."
No. Eric knows.
He put me in the hot seat, and it was an experience. The takeaway from this, David Helpling, is you said, "I am chasing the truth."
Yeah.
I am chasing the truth. I was there in the room and I watched him chase. And that's important. Again, there are 4 people here that are here for the right reasons, and that is the creative spirit in all of us creating something together, which is greater than the self. And I see 3 masters at that. And so this experience, we have this life, and we all know it to be short, but to have these moments that we'll share, I'm telling you guys, I won't forget this. The process to make this record was a true beauty, and beauty in itself is truth.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how
the
much
most precious resource we have is our time, right? And we're spending some of that time, just this little bit, creating something together. I think that's huge. Most people take that for granted. They go about their day and they don't even realize that the time they've invested, they can never get back. So how do they spend it?
And how are they handing this process off to AI when this is the most beautiful experience of the human experience?
Good point.
How are they handing it off?
Good point. Yeah.
Well said.
AI, again, not hating on AI, but it truly, the love of the journey, when you're traveling, it's not the destination, it's the journey. It's the little things that happen during that time that it takes to get there. And it's the same way with our creations, whether it be visually or sonically. And that's why the BTS video clips would be so cool. I think.
If only you could be there to capture it, David.
There you go. You're hired. Fly on the wall.
Now we're talking. Yeah.
But like Eric said, time is fleeting. And when Eric just said time is fleeting, that moment is gone forever. He just said it, and we can't go back. So the time that we spend creating art, even if it's me by myself in this room, the moments where I went really deep and I listened to what was coming in from something not for myself, and I let it come down. The moments Eric and I shared space, and we had this communal experience where we're both really happy and joyous and like making music together while pushing each other out of our comfort zones. Those moments are precious, and I'm not going to get those back. Only in my quickly fading memory do they exist, So what we're talking about is really important. And the record, The Precious Dark, is an entire 63-minute journey of captured moments from myself, from Eric and myself, David Behringer, and Daniel Pipitone, because we're all involved in it. So like you said, this is our legacy. When we're gone, this information, this beautiful record, all of those moments are going to be there. And just to think of that makes it feel so worth how much work it was and how we spent a year and a half on this. It makes it all worth it,
And how cool that around the world, creative minds have been able to come together and form the same vision, the same mission.
Yeah, I could dig down through the earth and come up where you are, probably.
That's
and
China. That's China.
If only.
whatever. If I turn 3 degrees to the left during my dig, I'd be there. But it doesn't matter. I'm just saying you're so far away. You're so far away that it's tomorrow where you are. And Eric and I are on different coasts. I'm in San Diego. He's in New York. We are so far from each other. Our weather is different. Our waking and resting moments are different. He's rising at a different time I am, but yet here we are working together. And when I was working on our music alone, whenever I got to a moment where something really beautiful happened, I would take my phone and make a little video of the thing, and I'd say, "Hey, Eric," and I would send him a 30-second clip. Look what I just did to this track. And so I got to send that to him, and then he'd call me and we'd have these great conversations, or he would just be like, "Hey, man, what you just did, it was so cool," or however you said it. I don't know. We had a lot of bi-coastal creation going on. It's very cool.
Yeah.
Great. I would take long walks down by the Genesee River and call David Helpling while he was in the studio, and he would explain to me how things are morphing, changing, and it was. There are times when I felt like I was still there with him. It's interesting how through art you can sort of just slip between dimensions a little bit. And, we speak of life that is short for sure, but there's life within life. And art is a window into not just your soul, but a place in which time may not even exist, and you can go there. And I've spent years with David. However, I was only out there for a few days, but the sessions themselves felt like we were slipping in and out of time. Mm-hmm. That's how high of a vibe we had humming in that studio, Deep Exile.
Yeah. We vibrated the walls to the point where I thought things were going to fall down. And there are times when it seemed like we've been working for hours and only a little bit of time had passed.
Yeah.
There's other times where it seemed like we just got started. And I'm like, wait, it's like 3:00. So time shifts based on your perception of it. And when Eric and I are together and when we're apart and he's on the phone and I'm like, hey, I think I want to put a full orchestral section in The Cavernous Heart. What do you think about that? There's those moments where we got to explore the very birth of ideas together.
Amazing musical conversations happened between David Helpling and I during this period, this renaissance, which includes the Dark Sky Alliance material.
Yeah.
The Precious Dark. That musical era was very, very interesting. A lot was said that you'll hear on the record. You can hear the thought process, and you can feel this vibe that we're speaking of. It's trapped within that music, within those binary code of zeros and ones in this digital world. It's trapped it to tape.
Captured in high resolution for other people to feel.
Yeah.
Especially if our listeners have a sound system that isn't this, like speakers that are moving air and moving their bodies in a space. Like our friend Joss Pronk, one of our awesome super listeners, he's got a massive tower of hi-fi gear and he cranks it up and he sits in this chair. He just sits in the chair and he has this experience. The music is moving the cells of your body. In your belly, in your legs, in your heart, everything. It's not just this little thing happening here. It's moving your body, and you're feeling what we felt when we were in here making the music. So that's the ultimate way to have people receive the transmission, if you will.
That's right. There's a lot. There's music here. This is modern composition, but music is a language, and it may be one of the oldest languages, and David speaks it. And so the compositions here, you're going to travel. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah, nice.
You are going to travel.
Right on.
Love that.
Before I let all of you go, can anyone pick a favorite track and tell me, and if you can, tell me why?
Dave,
I'll go last. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
My favorite tracks change. Right now, I
that
think
you already took my
That's
answer.
okay.
That's no fair.
You can talk about
that was going to be
more
my
than
answer.
one. You can talk about more than one. That's cool.
right now I'm super into Her Endless Cold Embrace,
That was
and
mine.
I'm super into the last track, and the last track is very important for this record, and no one's talked about it yet. But the
Yeah.
last track to me is probably my favorite track on the album. It's the longest, it's the most profound, and it sums up to me all of creation in one track. And yeah, that's
So,
We Rise in a Harmonious System is the name of
Mm.
the track. And I came up with that name because a harmonious system refers to space and bodies that have mass and gravity. And when there's a sun and planets, it all started out as chaos. And then all of this debris settled into rings around the sun, this burning ball of fire, and then they finally stopped crashing into each other. Like our solar system stopped, and that's technically the technical term is a harmonious system when you're talking about orbits of planets and stuff. So when everything is in alignment and everything is harmonious, we rise. So I think to me the music says that to me. So I think it's really exciting for me to have that track be the end of the record, because to me it's a really crazy, trippy, beautiful ride, and it's kind of intense in my opinion. So
Much like David Helpling, the favorite track, it often changes. But for the sake of this conversation, I mean, these 7 bodies of work are extremely important to me, and I love them all like my children. But
Mm.
The Ice Has Dreams
Uh,
um, was a piece that we did a lot of work on together, and I have very fond memories of that coming together. And again, David Helpling knew what he wanted to conjure from me to create that piece, and that was a very fun process. So for right now, for the sake of this conversation, I'm going to go with that.
well, I'd like to just say that The Ice Has Dreams is the most collaborative track on the record. And actually, The Ice Has Dreams is probably the only track that has more Eric than David in it. Because and this was also the track where I learned what you can do when you let go of your mental limitations and the tracks we fall into as creatives. Because he sat at my keyboard, the place I've been sitting at for 30 years, and he did something in 2 seconds that I've never done. And it was on The Ice Has Dreams, and he was bending these notes. And I was like, wait, it's going to go out of key. But no, he wasn't. He was making music. Yeah, it totally blew my mind.
It's so easy as creatives to, once we find something and we grab onto it, to then place limitations on our own selves
Yeah.
and build the boundaries and not go past that. And though I've been taking these photos for quite some time now, I'm always still thinking outside. Well, what if I poured oil? Or what if I, what if I used a different substance? So much of photography, actually art in general, is about experimentation and not drawing lines as, okay, this is as far as I can go, but continuing to push those boundaries and color outside the lines. So,
and I agree. And I think that's why it's really important for me in this stage of my life and in my artistic development to collaborate, because I tend to, like a lot of artists do, especially this kind of deep art, is I tend to overthink. I tend to second guess myself. There's a lot of self-doubt, and there's a lot of habitual motion. I pick up the guitar, my hands go to familiar chord shapes. I don't pick it up like I've never picked one up before and I do something different. And sitting with someone else who thinks differently than you or may disagree with you, like Eric Taylor, it's not that he's challenging me. He's pushing me to discover different ways to create. And had I tried to create the Precious Dark by myself, it would not be this deep artistic thing that it is. I promise you that. So there's a lot to be said about collaboration.
I agree.
If I had to choose one, I think I would go with The Precious Dark, the title track, because the name brings meaning to my art. And I think I mentioned it in one of my most recent posts that upon listening to the music, it dawned on me that the images are a balance between light and dark. A lot of people would look at the photographs and say, well, obviously, but you don't like. I didn't really stop and think about how delicate the balance is between the dark and the light. Without the light, the dark is just black. Without the dark, the light is just white, without any shapes, without any.
It's invisible.
So,
right.
Yeah.
It's invisible.
Exactly. So, the precious light, but also the precious dark. For the longest time, I tended to give much more credit to the light because the dark was my canvas and the light was the paint upon the canvas. But without the canvas, it goes back to just a perfect balance between the two, and finding that balance of as far as what kind of image I want to create.
For people who purchase the album, there will be a digital booklet included, and then you'll be able to see, anyone who wants to go grab that, and then keep your eye on our social media because we'll post it for everybody. You can see every single one of David's images paired with each track, and so you can sort of get a sense. Again, they're perfect matches, right? So for every track, there's an image associated with it, and some of them are just absolutely mind blowing. So, they're all mind blowing, but some of them really make this really distinct connection to the music in really amazing ways. And so, it's a great way to listen to the music and have that be your accompaniment. Definitely,
they make great desktop.
Yeah, they do. They do.
I put, not to toot my own horn, but I put a whole folder on my MacBook Pro, and when my screen goes blank, they just cycle through the vast variety of photographs that I've taken in this genre.
Wow. Yeah. I have to say that ever since we chose the cover image and we all decided this one is going to be the cover, you started posting all these new images, and almost every image you posted, I'm like, wait, maybe that should be the cover. And then the next day I'm like, oh, look at that. It looks like fire. You didn't do that before. You started posting all this breakthrough stuff after we had chosen. It's not that any of them were better, but there is so much intimate, deep detail that is completely beyond the mind. It's like you can get lost in all. I see shapes, I see planes of existence, I see these ribbons of dark and light, and every single image is vast. So I kept wanting to change the cover because you kept posting all this stuff. You did one again yesterday. Yeah.
I was wrapping up the release and David sent me a new one, and he's like, oh, by the way,
true.
in case you need this one, because we had already sort of picked, okay, this one goes with this track. We went through the entire track list, matched up the images, and David and Eric were both like signed off. It's great. And he sends me the one for the back panel that ultimately became the one for the back panel. But I literally had doubts whether I should share that with the two of them, because I thought, if I do this, it's going to rock the boat.
No, it would have been the cover. Immediately, it would have been the cover. I turn over the CD and I'm like, oh man, that image is so powerful. So powerful. It's like this spire of spiritual light with this totally out of focus thing. I'm like, what?
I would never go back. I would never go back on the decision. But it's like every single one of them becomes even more awesome and perfect. It's like, oh wait, what about this one?
And I've never been able to, not yet, recreate that effect. Something happened. I'm not going to say what, because I don't want to give away my secrets, but something happened that gave its sporadic light into the image, and I was fortunate that I had my hand on the trigger, on the shutter button, to take that. And I've gone back to that. I've gone back to that same spot to try and replicate, and I haven't gotten it. Not yet.
Maybe
it was a divine moment.
Yeah, truly.
Even if Eric and I could produce music very quickly, which clearly we don't, we could never supply enough music to keep up with your images.
Hurry up! Hurry up!
Yeah,
hurry up!
Let's get on it, man.
Yeah.
Very soon. We Eric and I are working on new music, and we have more. Eric has supplied me with more ideas than I can possibly even come to grips with. So all I need is that precious thing we talked about a while ago, and that's time. So if I can if anyone can send me some extra time, we can make lots of music,
I know that feeling.
David, is it safe to share that you will be joining me here in my simple situation, my small studio, for a few days in middle of May?
Next month.
New news to me. You want me to fly out in May? I'm sorry, you're talking today.
I'm talking to Helpling right now, Behringer. I'm sorry. Don't want to get you all excited.
Yeah. So Eric and I are both flying to Milwaukee, Wisconsin to do a live 3-hour interview with Mary Bartline and her awesome radio station.
Wow.
And she's going to play the whole album, The Precious Dark, and do a live interview. The next day, I am flying to Rochester, and I'm going to hang out with Eric Taylor in his studio, and he's going to press record, and I'm going to tweak on stuff maybe.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we're going to hang out and do some stuff. So that's May 10th is the interview, and you can listen to it online live when it happens. Otherwise, we'll be able to stream it later. But that's going to be a fun interview.
Yeah. So Mary Bartline is it 91.7 WMSE? Is that right? 91.7
WMSE, and I believe it's WMSE.org, and you can just click and listen to the current live stream of the station. So it's May 10th at 6 p.m. or something. I don't know.
You remember the time?
She does a great job with really thoughtful interviews. Her show is great.
Yeah.
She's really music. I mean, there's a picture of her at the studio at WMSE. I'm sorry. There's a picture of Tangerine Dream framed on the wall at WMSE wearing WMSE t-shirts because the prior Mary Bartline had them in studio for an interview, and this is
Wow.
1986.
Wow.
Yeah, and she's
cool.
got pictures of her hanging out with Peter Gabriel and all these people. So she's been into music and kind of this kind of music for a long time. But she's a deep, deep listener. She'll give me a time code. What is that sound that happens at 1 minute and 26 seconds? And really deep stuff. So the interview is really juicy, in my opinion, if you're into music production.
That is not an interview that I want to be a part of, where you pick apart.
You've got to
be on the spot.
You've got to be on your game. Yeah, you've got to be on your game.
That's got to be really challenging, as far as like being able to recall. Okay, what exactly did you do at that particular time point?
For me, it's easy because it's a recent work. If you go back to Rune from 2019 and ask me what that sound is at a certain time, I know it came from guitar, but I have no idea how I did it. But this record, we just finished and spent a lot of time on it, and we'll be listening to it while she's asking me. So
still fresh on your memory.
I remember every single thing and what synthesizer it was and what what kind of signal chain we used to create every little detail. Yeah.
Well, this has been great. Maybe this is a good spot to leave it here, but so The Precious Dark is out in just under a week, right? 25th, April 25th. It'll officially be available. You can find out more at our website, obviously spottedpeccary.com. Spottedpeccary.com/shop will get you to the shop where you can pre-order it now. You can find it on Bandcamp. And next Friday, you can get the whole package, and it'll come with a digital booklet, high-res downloads for anyone who is inclined. So things are moving quickly. It'll be here before we know it. So.
Oh wait, I think I have one down here somewhere. Hold on a second.
Do you have one? Do you have one handy?
Yeah, somewhere.
I've got one.
Yeah. I think I have more than one. Yeah, look at this, man.
Oh yeah, there she is.
Mine's in the.
And there's the image.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's it, man.
The troublemaker.
Yeah. Yeah. So
it's awesome.
It's so great.
As much as I love the cover, as well as the booklet itself that's included, when I saw the CD with the photo overlay, that blew my mind. I was like, what? Oh, it's so cool.
Right.
Pretty amazing, right? Is that the moment it was real? There it is. We've all got them.
That's so cool.
Yeah. It's
very, very honored, very flattered. Thank you guys again. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I and we are honored that you were willing to lend your super unique, in the entire world, unique art form. There's not a lot of people that can say that. No one does what you do, and you graciously let us bring it in and be the face of an entire experience. So thank you.
It's my
David
pleasure.
Behringer.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, your music, tit for tat, your music, the two of your music helped create the images that you see. So it's truly a marriage. Yeah.
That's pretty crazy. It's kind of circular, I suppose.
From all the way around the world, other side of the world.
Well, thank you, all three of you, for being part of this. Really appreciate it. This is what it's all about to me, to have us all kind of in the same virtual room. I think it's great.
Thanks for getting us together and making this happen, and be able to share very personal, intimate experience, and maybe a peek into what it's like to create something and to work with people, technically all around the world to bring this. It took a lot to bring this album to you, whoever's watching this, that is going to listen to it. So it's very cool for Daniel and Spotted Peccary Music to make all this happen. It's super, super cool.
Yeah, super cool.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. Well, David Helpling, Eric Taylor, David Behringer, thank you. The Precious Dark is out April 25th. Be sure and stay stay tuned in to all of the social media for all three of you, and to SpottedPeccary.com, Facebook, Instagram, everywhere you can find us. Stay tuned in because there's a lot happening. Be sure and like and subscribe in all the usual places. And until next time.